In sim racing and motorsport in general, being quick is only part of the challenge, because catching is one thing but getting past is quite another. There are of course different techniques for different disciplines of racing. Between circuit, oval and dirt, we could spend hours discussing all of the options and what is best in different circumstances. For this video however, we will solely cover racecraft within circuit racing, and will start by splitting racecraft into two categories: offensive and defensive. First up, offensive. Offensive driving, also known as being on the attack, is when you're seeking to gain a place from an opponent in front of you. Once you get to a certain ability level, simply rocking up behind your opponent isn't enough to get past anymore. Instead, you'll have to work for it, and the better you and your opponents get, the harder it will be to get past. So let's look at the different ways you can overtake another driver. Once you catch another driver, it is important to concentrate on how they drive. For example, are they early on the brakes into slow corners? Are they taking late apexes? Perhaps they struggle with one specific corner on the track. From this, you can begin to plot your offensive. In this example, I was following this Mazda MX-5 around Okayama on iRacing, and I noticed that every lap into the hairpin at turn 5, the driver was braking early and looked vulnerable in the braking zone. I was planning to dive up the inside, so I opted for this tighter exit out of turn 4, hoping to get a better run. I then stayed in the slipstream to not only gain speed, but also give the impression that I was going to stay behind. Then, as soon as I see the brake lights, I move out of the slipstream and dive up the inside. This is what you'll find professional drivers doing most of the time. They are looking for a weakness in the other driver to exploit and plotting in advance to make the move. Next up, we want to pressure another driver into making a mistake or put them on a suboptimal line. So here I wanted to show my nose to this driver in the hope that they would cover a move that I wasn't going to make, or maybe get distracted. You can see he begins to move over to cover me right at the braking zone, so while he is busy looking in his mirrors, I hit the brakes, watch him lock up into the runoff zone, and I take the position. Finally, in the offensive, we have the good old-fashioned dive bomb. Somewhat similar to planning the attack, you must have confidence in your own brakes and confidence in the opponent braking early enough for it to be possible. Find a nice tight corner and, in the immortal words of Daniel Ricciardo, lick the stamp and send it. Now, unfortunately, while we all love overtaking, more often than not you'll find yourself on the defensive. There are a few things you can do to keep an opponent behind, but it'd be lovely if we could magically find a bit of extra lap time. Well, it doesn't have to be magic. Simple data recorded by Track Titan can teach you where you're losing time to your opponents. Not only that, but the advanced AI gives you insights into specific instances that are causing you to lose speed. So it's all pretty clever, but assuming you're in the middle of a race, it's unfortunately fairly tricky to check the data while someone is trying to overtake you. So defensive. Like attacking, you'll need to monitor your opponent to see where you are pulling away and where they are gaining. From that, you can begin to form your defense. Quite ironically, when filming this video, the one time I need to be defensive, I found myself predominantly on the attack, so this example is from a driver defending me. At Brands Hatch, I have more confidence in the corners than the driver ahead of me, so I'm wanting to pass. Towards the end of the lap, I'm looking to make a move, but the McLaren stays on the middle of the track, prompting me to stay to the outside in the hope of a cutback. However, the other driver perfectly parks in the middle of the corner, preventing me from making a move inside or outside. Even on the approach to Paddock Hill Bend, the driver keeps right to the inside of the track, forcing me to the outside, then moves to take the corner, all while keeping me at bay. So now that we understand this, let's build our defensive wall. In your weaker corners, you may find yourself having to move off the racing line. This comes with advantages and disadvantages. While it may hinder their entry and prevent them from getting past, an experienced opponent would shift to focus on corner exit. If the corner leads onto a long straight, this can be particularly problematic. You see, do you defend the entry and risk being passed on the following straight, or do you leave it open and risk being dive bombed? I can't answer this for you, as you will always need to make your own judgment for the individual situation. If you find your opponent is a little further behind, then taking your normal approach, leaving the door open for them is the best option. Because if the driver attempted to make a move from further back, then they would scrub off too much speed, lose momentum, and even more time than if they had just sat behind you. Here I was following this Lexus and the Lamborghini behind me was in a good position to dive up the inside of Forest Elbow if I left the door open. Unfortunately, I was so close to the Lexus that I would have hindered my run down the Conrod Straight had I stuck behind him. So in this instance, letting the car run wide is the best option as I get a good run out of the corner and the Lambo ends up trying the move and loses out as a result. So now that we spoke about each one individually, there's a skill which requires both defensive and offensive driving, and that is the cutback. If someone is attempting to take a place from you, it might be worth considering letting them pass so you can reposition your car to take the position back. Like I say, this can apply to defending, but in this instance I was attacking. This Aston had a compromised run and the driver finds themselves on a very shallow inside line. I keep my nose there so that when we get to the corner, their shallow entry will lead to a wide exit, whereas my wide entry will lead to a shallow exit. In this specific case, the Aston positioned the car on the apex well, hindering my exit phase, but I still had enough of a run to overtake into the next corner. One last thing which should be mentioned in racecraft is driving etiquette. The online racing community is a fantastic place, but even just filming this video, we encountered driving such as this, and this. So don't forget to leave racing room for your opponents at all times, don't run them off the road, and of course, don't intentionally crash into them. Please. But back to racecraft. Of course, this is all just theoretical, and each approach from both offensive and defensive driving will need to be adapted for individual situations. There are other aspects to racecraft too as you begin to develop and hone your skills, like for example picking up the pieces when two drivers are fighting in front of you, but that's for another day. You will only improve upon racecraft by racing against others more frequently. Same with anything, the faster you go, the tougher the competition and the better you yourself will get at racing. So don't forget to use Track Titan to analyse and improve your lap times, enabling you to fight against more drivers. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider clicking the like button and maybe subscribing too if you're into sim racing just like we are. But until next time, drive safe and race with respect.